Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to another video. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Melissa and I have two squishmallows. Around here we do all types of beauty content, sometimes lifestyle content, just depends how I feel at that moment. And I do make two videos every single week on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Mondays, I like to do an eyeshadow palette review and tutorial, so this week we're going to be focusing on this ABH Amrezy palette. Now, I believe this palette came out in early 2020 and it was limited edition, so it is no longer available. But I do know many of you did buy this when it was available, so I kind of wanted just to do a look with it today. So here's the inside color story of what we're going to be using, and we're going to do a really cool look that really focuses on this blue shadow in here. So the first thing we're going to do is, of course, do the eyeshadow look, and then the second part of this video is going to be my in-depth review. So if you're interested in hearing my personal experience and thoughts about this, then stay tuned for that. But let's jump right into the tutorial. Alright, so I brought you guys up close and personal and we're about to get started. So me and my husband have been working on this whole studio setup and I am filming the progress of it. So it's taken me a little bit to get used to everything, so I'm kind of flustered working around here. So as usual, we're going to start with all the prep steps, and since I don't have any makeup on really today, I'm going to go ahead and moisturize my eye area. And then the next thing I'm going to do for this eye look in specific is go ahead and tightline, and I'm just going to take a black eyeliner and I'm just using a black pencil. And I just want to go ahead and darken in between the upper lashes. And keep your pencil around because we're going to use the same pencil on the waterline later in the look as well. And then I'm taking my Revlon Candid Concealer and going ahead and priming my eye. And then lately what I've been doing is, for the best blend of my eyeshadow, this Maybelline Fit Me powder, I just get the best blend when I set my primer. I've never been one to ever set my eyeshadow primer, but I recently just tried this and it's phenomenal actually. So the first thing we're going to actually work on when it comes to eyeshadow is do the entire underbrow, and for this I'm just going to take an angle brush and I'm going to dip into the shade called Barb, and I'm just going to apply this to the entirety of the spot under my eyebrow. So now for the actual front part of this eye look, I'm just going to take the same brush, and this is one of my eBay multi-purpose brushes that I always use, and this works so well. So the first shade I'm going to go into is called OG, and I'm going to take the shade and place it directly inside my crease, and I'm only going to take this to 3/4 of my eye. Now once you get that shade on there, just go into the shade called Wasted, which is the only satin in this palette. And we're going to take that shade and blend out the rough edges of that first shade. And then for this last little portion right here, still on that same brush, we're going to go into the shade called Yugo. And now this is going to go under the crease. So what I like to do is just start on my upper lid and kind of stamp it just underneath where the crease line is. So once I stamp the majority of the color, then I have a pretty decently clean brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and flip that shade a little bit up into the gradient. On that same brush, I'm going into the black shade called BK, and I'm really saturating my brush in the shade because we're going to put this on the lid and you really want it to be a really dark color. So I'm going to start at my lash line and start layering this up to be pretty bold. And when you start bringing it up, don't come all the way to the crease. Stop right before you get to the crease. Now what I did is I completely wiped my brush off on this microfiber towel so it's really clean from any eyeshadow at all. And I'm going to take this black shade and do little circle motions around the top edge so it blends kind of into that gradient that we have going, so there's not really a harsh line there. And I'm going to do this all the way around the entire edge. So that's the entire smoky look of the front eye. Now we're ready to get into the actual cut crease shape, and if you're looking for something really good to cut the crease, this ABH eye primer will do the trick. But just for today, I'm going to use the Revlon Candid Concealer, and don't feel bad, you could always use a concealer as well. And when I work on a cut crease, I always like to put a little bit of the product onto the back of my hand, so I have a ready to go palette. And the brush I'm going to be using for this is from Moda Brushes, and this is the number 3. And this is one of those new ones that I just got in that set, and I've never tried it before, so I just want to see how it works. So the way that we're going to be making the shape can be kind of tricky, especially if you have hooded eyes, because we're going to go right over the crease. So my trick to do this is to essentially just draw the line and then fill in the gaps when you're done. So we're going to be making a triangle shape, and the point's going to be in the center of your eyelid. So I like to start by making my point first. This is where I want the point of my triangle to be. And if your base kind of does what mine just did, don't be stressed out about that. We can always cover it up with some black shadow in the end. So starting from this point in the center, we're going to make a straight line to our eyebrow. And now once you make your straight line, you want to go ahead and perfect it. So if you have to close your eyes and fill in any gaps, then do that. So here's my straight line, and as you can see, I have a little bit of a mess there that I'm gonna have to go back in and fix, but that's okay. Don't let it bother you. We can easily fix it. So the next step is to start from that point in the middle and make a straight line going down. So once you have your triangle shape on there, you're just going to take a little bit of a thicker brush and go ahead and fill in the complete shape. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this very pointed brush and I'm taking a little bit of that black shade and trying to outline this triangle where the concealer bled a little bit. And now I'm just going to blend out that little top line just a little bit. So now we get to fill in this triangle. So I'm taking that very pointed brush and I'm going to the bright blue shade called Leo. And I'm going to go ahead and outline the triangle first. I noticed while working with this shade that you really need to build it up, so don't hesitate if you need to go in a few times to get the maximum opacity. You're going to want to fill in this triangle just to about your outer corner and leave the last 1/4 inch free. Now for this end part, I'm going back into a very flimsy brush and I'm just getting a little bit of that blue shadow onto the brush, and I'm going to blend this edge out. And the way I do that is start at the back, and then I want to pull the shadow out till it doesn't blend anymore. As you do this, you'll see how far you could stretch it, and just keep going along that line through the whole triangle. So I just went ahead and cleaned up any fallout that I had on my face, and I'm going back into this black eyeliner, and I'm going to go ahead and completely fill in my waterline. And I'm just taking that same multi-purpose detail brush and I'm going into the black shade called BK again. And I'm going to line my lower lash line in a tapered manner, going from thin to thick on the outer corner. And I'm also going to take that same brush and go back into the shade called Barb and pat this into my inner corner. I just did that because it matches the brow bone and I thought it looked cute. Okay, so this is the eye look. I'm going to go ahead and apply some mascara and I'll be right back to talk about it. Okay, you guys, I'm back and I'm completely finished with the eye look. Now, I have to say that I'm having just as much fun wearing this as I had creating this. You all know that my favorite eyeshadow color is blue, so anything like this that is majorly blue just makes me happy. Yeah, I know it's kind of a weird look and not necessarily a day-to-day look, but I just get great joy out of it. So if you are sitting at home and you have the amrezy palette in your collection and you've kind of been contemplating what to do with it, give this look a try. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section what you think about this look, and if you have this palette, let me know how you use it. But with all that being said, let's move right on into the review. Hey guys, thanks for joining me for the in-depth portion of today's review. And this is the palette that we're going to be focusing on. This is from Anastasia Beverly Hills, and this is called the amrezy palette. And of course, this is what I'm wearing on my eyes today. This is a limited edition palette that is unfortunately no longer available, but I do have quite a bit to say about it. So for starters, let's just get the packaging out of the way. This packaging is super pretty. This is my type of packaging. So this is a textured glitter cardboard packaging, and the glitter pieces don't fall off onto your hand or anything. The problem that I have with a texture like this is that every single piece of dirt that is around my house clings to this. This is a dirt magnet. So if you are a clean freak and you like to keep your makeup products clean, you're gonna have a hard time working on this one. So when we open up the palette, you get a nice mid-size mirror inside, and I do like that this palette does fold all the way back. And you also do get a brush included with this palette, but I don't have it to show you today. You get 16 different shades in here, and some of them are pressed pigments, so if you do have a sensitivity to pressed pigments, then please be mindful of that. Something cool is that this is Anastasia's first 16 shade eyeshadow palette. Each shade in here weighs 1.33 grams, so that's just slightly above the average amount per pan. And when I did the math, this has a 6:10 matte to non-matte ratio, so that makes 62% of this palette shimmer heavy. So if you prefer a matte heavy palette or a balanced palette, this is not the one for you. So of those 16 shades, you have 4 different formulas in here. You have 6 mattes, 1 sequin, 7 metallics, and 2 pressed glitters. So moving right into the routine data check, the first thing I always like to look at is that this palette is not clarified as being any type of clean formula. This palette is cruelty free. This formula is not vegan. And there's no expiration date listed on the palette itself, but it could have been on the exterior box, which I do no longer have. So now let's talk about the cost of this palette. Like I said, it's no longer available. The original price of this was $49, but if you're a person that likes resale makeup like I do, you can still get this for about $30 on average. So for today's cost evaluation, that's the number I'm going to use, so $30. So breaking that down a little bit comes to $1.88 per shade, and breaking that down a bit further comes to $1.41 per gram. So using those numbers, the cost per shade is excellent. And additionally, that means this palette has a relatively affordable cost per gram compared to other palettes that I've previously reviewed. So quickly, I'm going to throw up some pictures of some swatches from this palette so you can see how every shade looks swatched out. Alright guys, now we're going to move into the most opinionated section of this video, which is my recommendation. So the first 4 things I always like to talk about is patching, creasing, staining, and blendability. As for patchiness, I did experience some patchiness with this shade called Semsa right here. We're going to discuss that shade a little bit later in the video, so just hang tight on that. As far as creasing, I wore my eye look for 4 hours and I didn't see any signs of creasing whatsoever. I didn't experience any staining with any of the shades included. And regarding blendability, I find this formula in here very easy to blend out. So let's talk a little bit about kickback and fallout. If you've ever used the Anastasia formula before, this is a very, very powdery formula. Now I prefer a powdery formula, so I like that. But when I use this, I expect a lot of kickback and fallout. And when I did use it, that is what I got. I do enjoy that this palette does have the nice light to dark gradient that I always look for, and it does have multiple shades of depth, so it gives your palette more versatility. I also want to point out that I did notice some shade redundancy in here. These 2 shades swatch very similarly, as well as these 2 shades right here. So there's some shade redundancy in both the mattes and the metallics. I always like to point out that there is a matte black included in this palette, so it does make a palette truly universal, and I do love that. So now let's talk about this shade Semsa right here. I consider this shade to be a complete dud shade. When I use this, it just feels, it applies, and it resulted at just completely abnormally. Every other matte in this palette remained consistent to the normal formula, except this matte. So next, I always like to talk about the formulas a little bit. So as far as the mattes, like I mentioned, they are powdery formula. All of the mattes performed well in all aspects. They built, layered, and blended extremely well. And if you were curious about what type of formula the mattes were, they are more of a directly pigmented formula. So as soon as you dip your brush in and apply it to your eye, you're gonna see some intense pigment, so it can be a bit more difficult to manage and control that type of formula. So now let's talk about the non-mattes. In the non-mattes, there is one satin shade in here, and due to its finish, it's really a multi-purpose shadow. You can use it in so many different ways, and when I create my looks, I do use it in a lot of different ways. Some of the metallics in here do have a duochrome finish, which is really neat. Now comparing the two glitters, when you swatch them out, they both kind of resemble each other in both look and texture. And lastly, I attempted all the application methods with the non-mattes, and I used a dry brush, my finger, and a dampen brush, and I also use a silicone applicator with the glitters. And the good news is you could use any application method that you wish with the non-mattes, and they all worked perfectly well. So as for my final rating, when I did rate this palette, I gave it a B because I really did enjoy my time with it, but I did find some flaws in it. And if you personally were wondering about grabbing this, if you've been on the fence about it, I would say go for it. And of course, I have 3 reasons that helped me make that decision. My first reason is essentially this is a thoughtless palette because you can create any look and all the shadows pair well together. You don't have to worry about any odd contrast on your eye. All these shadows work perfectly in conjunction with one another. My next reason is kind of a con, but I do want to point out once again that there is a dud shade in this palette, so it's essentially useless. There's nothing you can really do about that. And my third reason is that this is a palette that does work in your favor and it's very easy to get the look that you want out of it. And like I said, I always like to mention palettes that work in your favor and not against you. And this palette definitely gives it to you. So yeah, guys, that is all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and liked this eye look. And if you did, please give me a giant thumbs up. And if you didn't, just hit that thumbs down button. And until next time, bye.